Hey friends, if you're a gardener or a homesteader and you struggle with poor soil quality, maybe you have a lot of clay in your soil or stones, or you just can't seem to grow anything in your soil because it doesn't have any of the good nutrients that plants need to grow. Well, I understand. I experienced that myself, and over the years I've kind of tested and perfected a method of rehabbing my soil, resetting it so that it grows in abundance in the next growing season. I'd like to share that with you in our video today. In my garden patch, I'm very blessed with about 8 to 12 inches of loose, brown, fertile soil. But you know what? It hasn't always been that way. Through a lot of hard work, I was able to reset my garden soil so that all of my plants love to grow in it. When we first bought this property for our homestead, our future homestead, I found the perfect little spot on the property for my garden patch. And then when I started digging, I realized that this perfect spot was full of gravel from a previous driveway from a homestead that had been built long, long ago. Also, I didn't realize, because I was new to the area, how incredibly hard to dig into was the red clay in North Carolina. And I knew I definitely needed to do some work. Here I am on a different part of our homestead, one that I haven't done any of the soil rehabilitation at all. And as you can see, we have some of these places where there is hardpan. It's hardpan clay, and it's literally almost impossible for me to dig a hole because it is so hard. And you can see that clay there, it just dries up. And it is very hard to grow. Obviously, nothing wants to grow in this spot, and as you can see, it's very scrubby in this whole area with mostly just weeds growing. If I wanted to make this area into a garden patch, what would I do? Healthy soil has three things. It's well balanced with clay, of course, like this has, as well as like an organic compost or humus content in it. That would be dead and dying things that feed the plants. And then also rocks and sand, something with a mineral component to it. Usually those are the three components of a healthy soil. And of course, if any of them get out of balance, then you have problems. Those three components help to structurally support a plant as well as hold water for the plant, and then also to feed the plant as its roots are growing. Now, your problem with your soil may not be too much clay. You may be in an area where you have too much of the compost content, or maybe your soil is too loose and sandy. The method that I use in order to rehabilitate and reset my soil can help with any of these issues. And if you follow these simple steps and take a little bit of time as well, you can find that your soil will definitely grow in abundance in a very short period of time. Think of the forest for a minute. If you take a walk in the woods, you see the leaves coming down and you step on the earth and the soil of the forest floor. And from the canopy of the trees all the way down to that earth, everything is just, it's self-maintained. Nobody has to water, nobody has to weed, nobody has to prune, nobody has to rake, nobody has to do anything. And you have this lush environment and the beautiful soil of the forest. So what we want to do with our method today is kind of mimic some of the ideas of what happens on the forest floor when those leaves and limbs fall down and they compact down to make that beautiful, abundant earth. The first thing you need to do is to identify your garden space. Now, some of you may have a garden that's already set up and you have some soil and you need that soil amended. But if you're a new gardener, you may be identifying a space that's in an existing lawn or maybe in an existing field. And in my case, I have it in the middle of the pasture here that I'm going to show an example today. The key is you want to make sure that whatever space it is, that you have as little vegetation on the ground as possible. You don't need to till. This is a no-till method. You don't have to necessarily till, but you want to make sure that that vegetation is either mowed very close down to the ground because you're going to kill it, okay? You want to actually kill it. Or you can use something like a string trimmer to be able to just get that thing as low as you can to the ground. So I'm going to go ahead and string trim this area to prep my garden area. So I've prepped my soil and everything is really low, ready to go. You don't want these plants to survive, so it's not necessary to really care about them at this point. In fact, the less growth you have, the better. That's what we want, is we want to condition our soil and reset it without anything growing at the time, because we want to work with the soil and then decide to plant things in it later. So what you'll need first is you will need a barrier, okay? And my recommendation for a barrier is either cardboard or paper, thin paper, like a newsprint type paper. The reasons why these are really good are because they act as a permeable barrier between the ground and the types of things that you're going to put on top of your cardboard or paper. And you want to make sure that things can pass through either way. Don't put plastic down or a weed barrier because those are meant to be impermeable and you won't be able to get all the goodness from the leaves or the wood chips or whatever you put on top of them. So cardboard is great because it will disintegrate over the matter of a couple of months. And with winter rains and snows, it's fantastic because it will disintegrate and then you'll be left with the goodness of what the soil has created. But I know sometimes you can't get a lot of this corrugated at one time, and you might have a larger area. And if you have a larger area, you may want to consider paper like this. This is a packing paper roll that we got from a manufacturing plant. And what's really nice about it, it's thin enough, like newsprint paper, that you can put it down in large areas. You can even double ply it if you want. I've done that before. And it's really, it works as well as the corrugated, and it will disintegrate over a period of time. If you don't have either of these things, you can put a very, very thick layer of wood chips or leaves on your area, and it will do a similar job. The only problem with that is that leaves will blow away, and wood chips sometimes there are chunks, and so those chunks will interact with the soil. You don't want to have too many large chunks of wood chips interacting with your soil because sometimes that will cause mold issues. If you have these barriers, you have less of that. Now, I have in my garden in the past put literally a ton of wood chips right on top of my garden because I wanted to go ahead and condition the soil. And it worked out really well at that time, but it took a little bit longer to make sure all of those large chunks were completely decomposed. In my small sample area, I'll lay that corrugated cardboard down, and then I will, right beside it, just as an example, roll some of this paper out. And cut that out right at whatever length you want. If you have newspaper, that's fine. Just lay the newspaper out. And you already know the area that you have identified, right? So you just fill that area with your barrier, whatever that is. So you see I'm layering this with 2 layers of paper, just as a little extra barrier to the elements. So put that off to the side. Sometimes it gets a little messy, but that's okay because all of this is going to disintegrate as the winter rains come. Now at this point in time, you'll have that down and you'll have available your input. And when I say input, what I mean is, in my case, I am trying to condition my very clay soil. So in knowing what a well-balanced soil looks like, I need to add compost and sand or some sort of mineral content. And I want to soften that hard pan clay soil. So I'm putting about, right now, 4 inches of wood chips on. You can go as deep as you want, but remember, whatever you put on there has to decompose before you can actually plant in it. Some of this has already been decomposing. I had a wood chip pile, and you can see that it's actually started to work pretty well. But this will hold moisture, and as that barrier, the cardboard or the paper, starts to disintegrate, it will allow the water from the winter rains and snows to get in there. And it will also cause little earthworms and bacteria to come up and start conditioning that soil. What it does keep away is the conditions that cause soil to be compacted, which is the sun and drying out the surface like that. And you saw how compacted that clay was. It won't be like that when all of this is conditioned. So what I do is I typically do this when I identify a new garden area. I do this in the fall, right before it starts to get cold. And then I just let it sit all the way through the fall and the early spring. So it gets, sometimes between 4 and 6 months worth of just sitting there. And it's basically just cooking that soil. And as that's composting, it's causing all of that nutrients and all of that goodness to get into the soil, and it blends in, and then you end up with a better product after that is done. Um, I've gone, the first time I did this, I went 10 months without even touching the soil, and I had even a better product where I had 4 to 6 inches of pretty good brown dirt. And I noticed immediately when I started digging in it, I didn't have these before. The earthworms had been attracted to this area because now I had this organic matter that had been put into the soil. And I was amazed at how, after 10 months, things had changed. With regards to wood chips, you want to make sure to use wood chips and not mulch. There's a difference. When you go and buy mulch at one of the big box stores in bags or something, a lot of times those have dyes in them, and that would be toxic to your soil. You actually want wood chips, which are different sizes, and they definitely compost better. The best source for wood chips is a local tree service. So make friends with a local tree service and maybe make a deal with them. They'll dump wood chips on your property and for free, for the convenience of being able to do that rather than taking those to a landfill or something like that. You'll be surprised sometimes how amenable they are to that. Now, if you don't have wood chips or you have a smaller area of your garden, leaves are quite good. In fact, leaves are really great because they compost quicker and they break down quicker. You can see a 12-inch stack of leaves go down to 4 inches in just one season. It's amazing how quickly they break down. But you want to make sure you do make it thick. 12 inches is great. And if you have a big tree in your yard or a park nearby, you can get a lot of brown leaves in the fall. That would be the way to go as well. Just make sure that you cover completely your substrate, that cardboard or that paper underneath, with enough weight to be able to make this method work. Here's another ongoing project that I've created with the wood chips. It's a food forest, and in the food forest I have identified areas where I just wanted to dump wood chips down. And notice, even after just 8 months now, how much it has broken down. And that soil up underneath there is very rich. It's getting richer. There are a lot of trees here as well that are adding their leaves to this. But this is my project for the season, and I think that it's going real well using the method that we're outlining in this video. Pretty excited about how fertile this soil will be in the future. All right, now we're on the home stretch. Of course, the most important point in all of this is being very patient, because this takes time. Having your wood chips and your leaves down on that cardboard or that paper for a long time, the longer the better. So at least 3 or 4 or 5 months over the winter, or if you can do it even longer. Now, once that's all done and you're ready to go ahead and find out what that soil looks like underneath, it should already be seeing some changes and undergoing some changes, getting looser, getting more rich. What you want to do at this point is not plant in it anything that would feed heavily, like corn or tomatoes or something like that. You'll want to put into the soil beneath and scrape away as much of the wood chip pieces that haven't composted as possible. Scrape those away and start planting either beans or peas or other legumes. Another good thing to plant, especially if you have a very large area, is buckwheat. All of these things fix nitrogen in the soil, and so they will grow, but they will not feed heavily. They'll actually put nutrients back in the soil that the soil needs for your next crops. And so think about that. If it's a little warmer, try some beans, like bush beans like this, because then you can actually get some product out of it. And that'd be great to get produce. Or the buckwheat is great because once that's done, and it only takes about 90 days to grow up and go through its life cycle, then you can just stomp on it and compost it right back down into the earth, and you will be amazed at how quickly your soil will be reset. I'm very proud of the soil that I've created in my garden patch. It took a lot of hard work and effort. I'm excited though with the results, and it has created a fertile soil that has fed our family for a very long time. And I want you to have the same thing. I want you to be able to see abundance out of your garden crops. So if you do this project and you execute it and you are patient and wait a couple of months and you find out that it works, I'd love to know your success stories in the comments below. Or if you've done this in the past and you give it a thumbs up, I'd love to know that you're on board. We're excited to be able to share these types of things on our channel. And as always, blessings from our homestead to yours.